wait for some people to pop in here. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. We did
Yeah, I
promote
feel
it,
like
and
we promoted yesterday, so
yeah,
they
yeah,
probably all showed up then.
yeah. And I did take the little the post down on X and on YouTube because it wasn't happening yesterday. I was just not awake, and I hate when you get like sleepy towards the end. But last week I wasn't even like it wasn't happening. It's
Yeah,
barely
just
happening tonight if I'm being honest. But
we'll make it work.
yeah, we'll make it work. But tonight we're gonna be, you know, talking about, and this is a good topic for right now because we're gonna be talking about movies that should be remade because one of the big topics that I've been seeing all over TikTok, and one of my favorite people on TikTok made a video about it, and Red Letter Media made a video about it. Just how they're like, we've been begging for original movies in theaters,
Hmm.
and now they're giving it to us, and nobody's going. And like, but people like show up for like Minecraft. Like, everybody shows up for that. They don't go to see all the new cool original stuff that's coming out.
Well,
And
well, let's be honest. It's a certain generational thing because it's like
yeah,
the generation below us. Because that's like the one like it's like I don't really get it, but like my best thing I can do is I go, that's somebody else's Pokemon or something. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like that's how big of a deal. And it's weird because that thing is actually quite old. Like you don't think about it, but like I think that first Minecraft came out in like 2007 or eight.
dang,
Like it's older than you always think, but maybe even
yeah.
older than that. But well, it's that weird one though that no matter what, I mean, I know they're making a bunch of like a little bit more original movies and so on like that, but I hate to sort of say it, it's the movie theaters in general. I don't think there's anything you can throw in there that's going to bring bring the casual audience back. The casual audience has kind of checked out.
Well, I just, and we'll get to our list here in a minute because again, we're talking about movies that should be remade, and I just don't think that Hollywood knows how to. What was the last big blockbuster movie?
That was not in game.
Not previously an IP. Like
Okay, now
the origin of the IP was the movie itself. The last one I can remember is Avatar. I feel how you want to feel about it, but that's the last one I can
yeah,
remember.
no. I agree that because that one's a total blockbuster. Something I would say it's like a lower level blockbuster would be like John Wick. Um,
Yeah, shout out Ahmed, your boy,
there we go. But
Hunter
yeah,
Biden
like
Gaming. Is that? Do you have the laptop?
but yeah, no, I
Oh,
do think it's totally true. Avatar was kind of the last like ginormous like, hey, it's a first time IP movie and they was really
hmm
big. As I said, John Wick, but that kind of is like as it's gone on because that's kind of hung up as like there you go. There's a series kind of blockbusters as far as action movies go.
no. I hope we're not the first people you're telling they're Wolf Gaming, because it's totally lost on us. Um, but I mean, if you want to do a soft launch, um, oh, we'll call it a flaccid launch. Um, and you just tell people that you're gay. That's cool. I mean, I guess you know. I'm glad you're testing the waters here, but yeah, that's the last time I remember like a non-previous IP being a giant box office hit. Like everything else is, you know, based on something. But even you go back to the '90s, like would Jurassic Park even be made now? Because
Yeah.
yeah, it was based on a book, but the rights for the movie was sold before the book came out, and yeah, it was a big book, but it wasn't like this cultural phenomenon. So would they
Hmm.
even make that now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have the brand equity, I guess.
And then also too, movies made off books is not nearly as common as it used to be.
No,
That used to be the golden source that people went to, and nowadays, like yeah, every once in a while they'll pull a book, and something like that. But
no.
mostly it's like it has to be like historical drama or something of that nature.
Well,
That's where it comes from.
now they're making like things off like they're making a Minecraft movie. It doesn't even I wasn't even aware there was a narrative to Minecraft. And then also they're making like a Monopoly Go movie.
Yeah, no, no, not
So
regular Monopoly. Monopoly Go.
I feel like it said Monopoly. Maybe I'm just putting that in there, but I feel like that's what it said. So it's just like, oh my
I did see one that was kind of cool though. So I don't know. There was just a little tidbit that popped up that talked about that Michael Bay was going to be doing an Outrun. Outrun the Sega
god.
arcade game from the '80s. And I was like, that's actually a pretty good combo. I think that might work out. I don't know. As long as
Yeah,
there's nothing too goofy thrown in there, as long as you just get a lot of cool car shots, and then you just kind of give it like a simple story of like, hey, here's people like traveling like all across Europe or whatnot.
yeah.
That's all you
Ma-
gotta do.
Make it
Cool
look like it.
tunes.
Yeah, make it Outrun soundtrack, synthwave soundtrack, Outrun '80s aesthetic. Sydney Sweeney.
Hmm.
We're there.
Yeah,
So
we're there. It's just
this one I'll be a sucker for. This one, market me, daddy. Like, I'll take it. But like, yeah, the rest of everything else, just oh god. Um, but yeah, and so everything's reboots, sequels, prequels, some type of IP that's popular, and they feel like they can make a buck off of it, and that's succeeding at the box office. And they give you this original stuff, and they just don't know how to. They really just don't know how to market it anymore. Like, think about even Congo in the '90s. You could throw together like a fast food tie-in, or Wild Wild West. These movies were kind of terrible comparatively,
Well,
and
I thought about or go ahead.
no, that's it. I mean, they could have market non-IP stuff in the '90s. They could create new IPs in the '80s and the '90s, and now they can even do that. At least in the theaters, they can't. TV
Well,
does okay.
yeah. Well, you know what I was gonna say though is I thought about this the other day. Is The thing is, though, is like it's kind of tough to advertise stuff anymore nowadays if you really think about it. Because before, you would run across those ads on TV as you're watching stuff, and that would tell you about new movies or new properties or new video games and all that kind of stuff. But I think about nowadays, like everything that I have streaming wise, it's like if you can pay to not have commercials, boom, get rid of those. You know what I mean? If you're on the internet, you have an ad blocker running, so you don't even see them on there. Like you try to avoid them on every single like place there is, but the only downfall is like, yeah, you block a lot of the ads you don't really want to see, but you do kind of miss out on like, oh, I'm just going to stumble across this little movie TV spot on here or something like that, or these other little trailers and so on you took for granted. But the fact is that like I notice that of myself that a lot of times I don't know what's really coming out anymore because there's no it's just you don't see the advertisements anymore. You've blocked it all. My YouTube doesn't have ads or anything like that, so it's like none of that's there. So like you sort of are out of the loop sometimes. And I think with a lot of companies, I always kind of go I've always talked about this with Warner Brothers when they do their animations for whether it be the DCU ones or I've been talking on the podcast about those Mortal Kombat animated ones that they made that were really good, but they just sort of kind of came out and like it's almost like they have nowhere to really advertise them. So unless you kind of stumble across it or somebody tells you about it, like that's all that's kind of left is word of mouth and just accidentally stumbling across it. You
Mm,
can't just be like, "Hey, it's a Cartoon Network," and then you put an ad up right there, and then everybody sees it, or it's Fox Kids, and here you go. But yeah, you don't get that anymore.
yeah. Well, I think that's another reason IPs work, because they've built this infrastructure where
Hmm.
online, okay, let's whatever this fandom is. Okay, they have places where they congregate. They have the main social pages for whatever fandom this is, and then they have their Reddit threads, and then they have their online websites. They have these places where they congregate, but then they also like, hey, the people who are into this thing also play Fortnite, so we can have a Fortnite skin for said IP, and we can do these cross collaborations with these things that we know these other people are into, so that they are good at crossing over other IPs and merging with them and like business to business, but they can't create anything new anymore. Um, so it's kind of ass, but
Yeah.
and most of the time, even when they do it successfully, the movie still kind of sucks. Like it's just not good. But um, yeah, so we're gonna talk about movies that should be remade, and I think both of us were in the mindset of, okay, these are movies that could have been better or were really good, that they were actually good enough to be hits. They just, for whatever reason, weren't, whether it be marketing or just maybe it was a mistake with the casting, or like they cut too much of the movie, or the money ran out, or something. and
Mhm.
movies that are probably conceptually good and have something to offer, or maybe even ahead of their time. I have a movie. One of my on my list is a movie that was executed pretty well. It just didn't work then, but I think now would actually do really well. So that's what we're talking about tonight. Um, so I am here. Welcome, Ezra. Appreciate that. So I'll tell you what. You go first this week. I went first last week with Star Wars.
Yeah.
And we have to. Do you want to
Well,
do the honorable mentions first, or do you want to save those for later?
let's save those for later. So we're gonna do like a top three of our main ones. Then we have
Yeah.
our list of honorable. Okay, cool, cool, cool. That's kind of how I wrote mine out.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna start my list off with number three, and that is I would be interested to always see a remake of this movie. And it might sound a little bit like blasphemy, but of the Warriors, the '70s one,
Mm,
because that's a movie that it's a really good movie, but I think it has an amazing concept. But I always thought that it could be a little bit better. Like, don't
yeah.
get me wrong, it is great and it is classic, but it's that one that I have watched it multiple times throughout the years, and I've always been like, it's good, but I always feel like there could be a little bit more here, And even at the very end, it's like even like the final boss guy or whatever you want to say, the Warriors, like that guy just goes down like just a little bitch right at the very end. You're like, that's your ending battle here, like
Yeah.
you're building up to this whole chase and everything like that. And I kind of thought about it. I'm like, who's somebody who would kind of get the '70s and kind of get that little bit of aesthetic and slightly over the top and everything. I'm like, I think that'd be a fun movie for Robert Rodriguez to
Mm,
do a remake of the Warriors. Still keep it. I think it should still be a period piece. I think it should still be '70s, and I think it
yep.
should
I
definitely be
agree.
New York. You wouldn't want to take it out of those two locations. But the fact that Robert Rodriguez, I think, could take a bunch of those kind of gangs and just really spice them up, keep them over the top, keep them kind of fun because that's really a lot of the look and the aesthetic of the Warriors is great. I love like the baseball guys, and just even like the kind of mime section and so on like that, and just
Hmm.
all the look and feel of everybody there. So keep that going, but just maybe like crank it up, put a little bit more action in it, put more martial arts type stuff in there. Even make the violence maybe more intense. I think that that's one that I've always thought would be great for a remake.
That is actually pretty interesting, and I think you're right because it kind of reminds me of the first Mad Max, where really cool concept, really cool. It's a good movie, but
Hmm.
like it's not fully realized. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like it
Yeah.
could be more. And yeah, I kind of agree. I
Yeah,
would.
and then the Road Warrior is what takes it, fully realizes it in a
Right,
sense,
right.
you know?
When that comes out, the Road Warrior almost in a way is kind of reminds me of like Evil Dead versus Evil Dead 2. Like there's Evil Dead, but then the second one, you have a little bit more money, you can do more stuff with it. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that. Would be actually interesting, but you're right. It has to stay 70s. That's the one thing I agree. It's got to stay there.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like you could see somebody else remaking it and they try to modernize it and they would tone it down and it would not it would lose some of maybe I guess its campiness and fun and it's like no I think it's got to keep that '70s aesthetic and it should keep that even that kind of slightly comic book aesthetic it has because that's
Yeah,
also the other interesting thing about the Warriors is it has those like comic book page turns which is actually kind of like way ahead of its time if you think about it. It's like feels like something you wouldn't see until like the '90s
yeah,
and it's doing it there but I think that would be kind of a cool way to keep it. I mean, you kind of mix the feelings of like Machete, Planet Terror, and even a little bit of Sin City kind of in there and so on like that. Hopefully, I would say that Robert Rodriguez would just not do his George Lucas and like CG Land thing. Nope. Like let Robert Rodriguez go back to kind of his old school like Desperado, era where it's
hmm
like have a little bit more of the practical effects and so on like that. You can still shoot on digital, nothing wrong there, but like, I think kind of pull it back just a little bit like that, make it a little bit more like you were shooting an older movie. But I still think he would just deliver it and he would get that, the '70s aesthetic and keeping it kind of faithful and maybe even making it kind of even more grindhousey like.
Who else I think would actually? This is gonna maybe shock you, but someone who else I think would actually do a really good job with that, and I do not know why. But Ben Affleck would actually do a really
Yeah.
good job with that. Like,
You
yeah, he likes some gritty, like city, grimy stuff, like the town and things like that. I don't know
yeah.
how you do with the campiness aspect, but you know, I'd be interested. I wouldn't mind seeing his take on something like that. I think he could do it.
Yeah, I would too because really anything that Ben Affleck's ever directed, I always thought was super good anyway. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
I get excited when he's got something. So that'd be actually kind of a cool one. And it's one of those ones. Sometimes like when people kind of do something like you're kind of used to like the certain style they kind of do, but then they get something that's like a different property, and they go, no, here, like believe me, I got a good idea for this.
yeah,
Kind of just like how like it would have been cool to see Ben Affleck actually direct his own Batman movie.
exactly. And I would even be. I don't like Zack Snyder as a director at all or a writer, but I do think he has some cool visual ideas. And so having him like paired with Ben Affleck, and they could do something cool with that. Just as long
Yeah.
as he stays away from anything that involves the story or the plot or um,
Well,
yeah,
I do think Zack Snyder, if he follows like a comic book, I think he does pretty darn well. Like The
right,
Watchmen, because it's like I think that's really accurate because he follows it pretty much page by page for the most part. And
yeah,
same thing of 300. When he follows a straight path like that, I think those ones all work out really well. You
yeah.
know, um,
I agree. I mean, he just can't. He can't write a story. He just can't do it, or at least he can't fit a narrative into a movie. But he has some unique visual ideas. He's like Michael Bay, you know.
yeah. Well, he's a visual director, really. But at the end of the day, like
Yeah,
that's what you hire him because you want to see special. You hire them for that, and you hire him because he's going to save you a lot of money because he's just going to shoot everything against a green screen.
yes, yes, yeah. The Roger Corman of CGI. So yeah, so the Warriors. That's a good one. That's an interesting pick. Kind of a hot take because that's a big one. But I actually like it. I like that. I like that a lot. Because I don't have my second one's kind of is a little bit hot takey, but not too much, not to that level. But that one's really good. But my number three is a movie that we reviewed in the past that I felt was really good, very well written, um, and was good when it was made 40 years ago. But man, if they brought it out now, it would be way more relevant. And I feel like you could really fix the villain situation in the end of the movie, which was really, really poorly done. But the Runaway, or Runaway,
Oh yeah,
with,
Runaway with Tom Selleck.
with Tom Selleck and Gene Simmons, um, it's kind of about um, advanced robotics. You kind of have a little bit of an AI element to it, and kind of an iRobot thing. What if the robots decide they want to be hostile and break that rule that where they can't hurt anybody? Um, and that's a little bit in there in this movie. And Tom Selleck is this cop that just wants to deal with this thing because he doesn't want to be in the field anymore. He wants to stay safe, and he basically there's this murder situation, and his son gets kidnapped, and he's got to fight these robots. And Gene Simmons is there, and he's got this gun with a crazy bullet, like a heat-seeking bullet. Really cool ideas, really cool concepts. But today, where we're AI is getting stronger like every day, it's becoming an actual part of our lives now.
Hmm.
And people don't talk enough about how robotics is rising to simultaneously with AI, which is scary as fuck. When you really think
Yep.
about it. Like, the Boston Dynamics robots that they have now, when it went from that little dog that can move back and forth to like now this bipedal, 2-ton robot that can do backflips and stuff, which they gave it a gun, I think, at some point, which is it's terrifying. Um, that robot is actually more advanced than the robots that were in the movie. But the difference is everybody was using robots in the movie, but you know, in the future that they had created, it was a part of everybody's lives. They had robots in the home, blah 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 blah, and that's where I think we're going to be in the next 10, 15 years. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, on Amazon right now, you can buy robots to be in your house right now.
yeah, well, the Tesla
So
robots are there.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's going to be part of our lives in the next 10 or 15 years. We'll have little robot slaves in our home, and um what happens if they go haywire, and then there's drones, and there's just we're on the precipice of quantum computing. So all those ideas and stuff, that movie was big then, but it felt like kind of a stretch, you know what I mean? And it also
Hmm.
didn't feel like the future. It didn't, you know what I mean? Like it felt like 1984 but with robots. They didn't do a really
Yeah.
good job of saying this is the future. um I think if they made that movie now, set it in like we'll say 2048, um, something like that. It
Yeah.
would it would be more relevant. You can hype it up a little bit, fix the villain a little bit. That movie would be, I think, do better now than it did then.
Well, in that movie was also that was Michael Crichton written and directed too, if I'm
Yes,
not mistaken.
it was.
So, and that's always just gosh, because that's always such the bummer that he passed away kind of almost too soon for the fact that I feel like he could have wrote some stuff, even if he did do the same thing where maybe he came back and started making movies again and so on like that, taking that because he did that a few times where he would sort of remake his own stuff. I mean, Westworld kind of turned into Jurassic Park and so on like that,
Yeah,
but and same if there's other ones too that he kind of has that are like that. But that's the one, yeah, I think that the Runaway, I think you definitely have to have Gene Simmons back in it though. That's the key thing. If you don't have Gene Simmons in
yeah,
it, you're missing out. But I would love. I think that is a movie that like you could totally remake it. It would never take away from the other one, but it would just there's a lot of stuff that could be used nowadays that would make total sense.
Dig Dug's Artifacts and Adventures. We'd love to chat with some original Star Wars with y'all someday. Robot Slave sound like a great mashup of Bicentennial Man and Roots.
You know
Uh,
what's the weirdest thing is like you remember? Do you remember when Bicentennial Man came out? 'Cause now mentioning that because I was actually thinking about that when you're talking about the robot things. I could have swore because I remember seeing that movie in cinemas. That movie started off and it's like the very first thing was like 2005. It's like one of those ones like I'm like whoa, you guys got this movie came out like what like 99 or something like that or 2000. They're like already telling us we're gonna have like robot Robin Williams in our houses. And then I could have swore that like I think when the movie came out on DVD that they cut that little part out and be like, put a little bit farther ahead in the future.
yeah, they probably did. I'm gonna look that up in like the trivia. But yeah, Dig Dug. Yeah, we'd love to talk some Star Wars with you. Last week, that's what we ranked our Star Wars film. We ranked the Star Wars live action films. We left out the animated stuff and we left out the TV shows because it's just too much.
Yeah,
And
we
I
did
haven't
we did
watched.
all 11.
Yeah, all 11 feature length live action theatrical movies. We did
Yeah.
those. So check it out. That was last week's talk, and I think you'll at least have some opinions about our rankings. But so we both done one. So you did the Warriors to catch you guys up. Here's just a recap. We're
Mhm.
doing movies that should be remade. Definitely focusing on the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s because that's the VHS era. The first one you picked, Spencer picked was the Warriors, and I picked the Runaway with, or it could be just Runaway. I don't know. It's got Tom Selleck and Gene Simmons in it. Google that, and that's where we got so far. Oh, and Wolf Gaming came out of the closet for us,
Yeah.
so which I just thought, I'm honored, honestly, but I really feel like it was wasted. Um, it's just not the place. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe it's a build up, you know what I mean? You
We're
start here,
yeah,
you got a safe place, a safe haven as long as
yeah,
these runaway robots don't get us, but
yeah. We just don't have the emotional maturity to handle that. Uh, I think is what it is. Um, so
that's
anyway,
okay. There'll be a robot on either AliExpress or Amazon that will be able to handle all this for us, and we won't have to worry about these things anymore.
an AliExpress robot. That's the one thing. You know what? I think I'll splurge. I think I'm gonna go name brand. I think because I just don't want. First of all, China. Okay, all right. I want a Ford robot in my house. I want built Ford tough.
Yeah,
Um,
you want those Bronco robots.
yeah. Um, so so what's your number two movie that should be remade?
So yeah, my number two for a movie that I would like to see a remake of, and once again, like actually all these movies on my list are all like pretty solid ones in my book. But this is one of my favorite movies, or one of my favorite childhood classic ones of all time. And I think it's a fantastic movie with a great soundtrack. It's got all kinds of stuff going for it. Now, granted, I grew up just watching the Living Daylights out of this as a kid, so I might have a little bit of nostalgia riding for it. But I think it's one of those movies that I think is such an amazing concept, and there's really only a few movies that use this concept in a sense. And I think it's time to bring it kind of back. And I'm going with my all-time favorite Stephen King story, Maximum Overdrive, but I
Oh
want it to be
man.
directed by Rob Zombie.
Oh, I just started watching that again the other day
I
for
love
a
that movie
review.
so much,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And it's
Um,
it's that one that there's not that many car killer movies out there. There's Maximum Overdrive, then there's Trucks by Stephen King as well. Then there's Christine, there's The Car, which I actually just bought on Blu-ray again to relive those childhood memories. And I think there's like one other one that I can kind of think of, but that's like it, And I remember as kids just really trying to see. There's not that many of them,
yeah,
and I would love to see that kind of done. And I think Rob Zombie, I keep saying I definitely think Rob Zombie could add some, flavor to it. You know what I mean? And I personally like that Halloween remake he did. I know some people kind of have some mixed feelings about that, but I thought that one was fantastic. And taking Maximum Overdrive and just kind of turning it up just a little bit more on the insanity meter and so on like that, I think would be really fun. And still you can still keep it that bottle film style where people are maybe just trapped at the gas station diner, but just make it a little bit more psycho, almost even twisted metally like.
yeah. There's a lot of things you could do with that. Um, the original one had the benefit of cocaine. Not that
Yeah,
you can't
and a
bring it
lot of
now,
it.
but we're just not. We're that's a little more regulated these days in terms of the creative process. Which at that point in time, I feel like was more encouraged to be part of the creative process back at that time. But yeah, that would be fun. You you could do a lot more with it because you could have the whole thing like the aliens come, and now the truck's got like some automation to it now.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's kind of like the Runaway, but it takes over the truck, and now it's like super evil. But it would be the only thing difficult about it was not repeating some of the ridiculous things in there. And you'd have
Yeah.
to come up with new things, but even maybe a sequel or something. But I don't know. But that's a good idea. I would watch
Yeah, a
that.
sequel would be kind of cool too. I still even picture that being in a weird way a period piece, like it still takes place in the '80s
Yeah.
almost. Because it's one of those ones that, like there's a lot of stuff you can do now, but let's be honest, vehicles were just cooler looking back in the day, anyways.
Hmm.
And just the fact of like, I think just the idea of this, you use the alien thing, just it's a simple plot device, but it just kind of explains like whatever the alien thing's taking over the vehicles. We don't need to explain anymore. And I would keep it to just vehicles. I know that like there's kind of machines like but I always thought even like when the electric knife gets the lady and everything, I'm like, okay, like this is a little far fetched here. You know what I mean? Pump the brakes on that. Like, I like the idea of sticking it strictly to. You can have planes if you want and so on like that, but just generally it has to be like a vehicle, a plane, or a boat. Like nothing else. Like if you can't get in it in Grand Theft Auto, it can't come to life.
Yeah. I'm. You could do maximum overdrive with a truck, bring it back, and then next time you're doing like a boat or something. There is the whole speed two curse, so
Yeah.
you gotta be careful with that. But no, man. Yeah, I would be for that. You still have to have ACDC involved.
Yeah. What's funny? Because I was talking about this literally with the Chat GPT, speaking of robots and so on like that. And I just kind of threw that out there to it. I just wanted to see, and it was like, and then Chat GPT, because I talked to it so much now, now it replies to me like, dude, bro, dude, this will be awesome. Like it's like almost like a friend who's like a little bit too much of like too pumped up with your ideas. Like it's like, okay, Flavor Flav, calm down here. Like you don't need to be my hype man too much. But they're like, think about it. It's like you gotta have ACDC, but you should also throw some White Zombie, Motorhead, Judas Priest, and Blue Oyster Cult in there. I just love how it had it. I didn't even ask it for that, but it's like, let me tell you, like this is some other tunes that should be in there.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it done like a few years later, like in the early '90s, and have
Hmm.
some like Alice in Chains, uh,
Yeah.
that kind of. Well, I mean, I guess I don't know when that is, but yeah, just like
Well, you
sleep.
could kind of go with that more like literally. It sounds weird, but just give it more of that Rob Zombie like era music in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
That's
you could
probably
do
the
that.
best way to look at it because he did because back in the late '90s, he used to do a lot of soundtracks for video games. So he did Twisted Metal, I think 3, 4. He did Nightmare Creatures 2 and everything like that. So I kind of picture it having that sort of look, even. So that '90s look would actually be kind of cool looking in a
Yeah.
sense as if you fuse Twisted Metal, but with Maximum Overdrive, and
Hmm.
maybe even maybe made it a period piece of the '90s. Like it could be a sequel in a sense. I kind of like that idea just as much too.
Yeah, sequel in the '90s. You don't have as much, but you can't like have a killer truck listen to the Jim Blossoms. So you have to. I mean, you could, but
You
I mean,
could for
I like the Jim Blossoms though. I ain't gonna lie. I'm gonna pretend I don't like it. Found out about you. All right. But Maximum Overdrive. That's a good one. I would watch the fuck out of that. I really would.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's a good combo. As I said, just picture, yeah, picture the '80s movie, fuse it with Twisted Metal, and then overlay it with all the Rob Zombie-ness. I think that would be the way to go. And it'd be something different for him to do because I've never seen him really do. I mean, he has cars, he likes all that kind of stuff in the music. Obviously, half his songs are about that, but I don't think he's ever really been done like let's just do a full-on car movie.
Yeah,
These movies they have a car in it, but nothing like you know car action, I guess.
yeah. I'm trying to think of who you'd have star in it, but I don't
I
know.
love because once again, ChatGPT without even like it gave me a list of people to star in. Of course, Sherry Moon Zombie was the first thing. It was like, well, yeah, she's always in all those movies, you know.
Yeah,
But it gave me a bunch of those kind of like almost a lot of those guys that you would see in like those Rob Zombie films and so on like that. It even says like, hey, you got to have Eli Roth as a cameo in there. I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds fine to me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, shit. Maximum Overdrive. You have to have some catchy like name for it. Like, I don't know. You'd have to. You can't call it two. So you'd have to
Yeah, no.
completely reboot it, or you would. I see. I don't know. Probably reboot would probably work best, but I'll be down for a sequel.
Yeah, it could be one of those sequels too, where it's a sequel, but like it's not like you have to know anything about the first one, kind of thing.
Yeah, it has
Like maybe there
Shutter
could be that
exclusive written
one
all over it.
character in there that's been like, "Yo, this happened before." I was, maybe you have an old Emilio Estevez. I don't know. That'd be kind of
Yeah.
sweet.
Oh gosh, yeah. Who? He's gonna be busy. He's making Young Guns 3 right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he'd make Young Guns 3. He can make Maximum Overdrive 2 now.
Yeah.
He can make Repo Man 2. So let's just pull out like all the old greats of Emilio.
I'm here for the Emilio Sans. I'm here for it. Um, yeah, that'd be awesome. But all right. So your number two is Maximum Overdrive. So my number two is kind of a cheat because I couldn't decide between several movies, and then I was like, you and I've discussed before about creating a cinematic universe with these characters, and I all these movies I'm going to mention, I feel like, with the exception of one of them, I think were subpar. They were good. There were things about them that they did very well, but they all could have been better. The Phantom, The Shadow,
Mm,
The Rocketeer, which is the one I think was probably the best of those. And Lee Falk, I didn't know this, but I was doing some research. He had a show in the '80s called, I think it was Defenders of Earth, and he took Flash Gordon and put it in that show with Phantom and
oh,
Mandrake the
interesting.
Magician. Yeah, and so I'm like, oh, Flash Gordon was another one I was looking at. So my idea is to create like a cinematic universe set in the like 30s. Keep all the Marvel people away from it. Not that I don't like the Marvel movies. What up, unks? um, uh,
Well, no, I know what you mean because the Marvel has a certain style that, like, yeah, sometimes it's like that's the downfall. Is now it's become like all the movies seem to generally have that. That's why I'm actually kind of looking forward to that Fantastic Four one because it actually looks like it's finally starting to change a little bit. But
yeah,
I think you would definitely need a completely different crew that's separated from all that stuff.
I want noir. I want high high adventure. I want like like real romance in it. I want like 30s. I want it to really be heavily inspired. I want it to be Indiana Jones.
Hmm.
I want a lot of that in there. But yeah, the Phantom, the Rocketeer, Shadow. You could even
Dick Tracy.
you could throw Dick Tracy in there. You could throw Green Hornet in there. Um, I even I was thinking this out way ahead, and I was thinking, man, I would start actually before the 30s, and I would do like a Lone Ranger and Zorro mashup and
That'd
have
be cool.
that, and then build like the universe, the bad guys, and some of the stuff, and then continue it later into the 30s with that group. And yeah, I think that's what I do because all those movies are big. I can't believe they haven't remade Phantom already. The Phantom. Um,
And I almost
That
want this sounds the most bizarre thing. I could have swore I think there's a literally a Phantom video game coming out like this year or next. Like I
that's
want to say it popped up and I was like, that is such a strange. I mean, I'm glad. I think that's cool they're doing it, but I'm like, boy, that seems like that's like way like reaching. It's like sometimes when there's those video games that come out where I feel like this video game is literally made for my grandpa who's not alive anymore. Like that's who your target audience is.
yeah. Something about that character though, just the Phantom in particular, just is timeless.
Hmm.
Um, and they're probably getting close to a lot of those characters are probably getting close to public domain.
I was thinking that too when you were mentioning that. I'm like, I wonder how many of these characters are. The one it's not is the Rocketeer, because oddly, even though that seems really old, it's actually was created in the late '80s. Yeah,
Right, right, right. Um,
because it's literally just like I had like the full graphic novel of it, which is really good. But that's all it was. But it was just very nostalgic for that time period, so much so that it fits right in that same void.
oh yeah, it's new, but I would still throw it in there because
Yeah.
fuck cool. I mean, having all those in there and just having them like, I'm just picturing a big old fight with like, they're over the jungle and the Phantom is, fighting a bunch of guys on this giant like zeppelin, and Rocketeer's there, and then you bring in the space shit, but I want it to be like very Flash Gordon-y, and you bring in Flash
Hmm.
Gordon with that.
With
Um,
Buck Rogers.
yeah, fuck yeah, fuck, go crazy, man. Like
No,
and it would
it was a
probably
sad.
be done by Disney, but if I was in charge, I wouldn't have them. I would just keep the Marvel people away from it, not because I don't like anything that they've done, just because I'd want it to be very, very different. I want to bring. I would probably bring Dallas Howard in.
Yeah. Well,
I
it
would
would be
keep her
cool
around.
if it was just really if it just really make it like it was 1930s. I think that's the
Yeah.
thing is give it that really because that's such a great era of not only just movie making and so on like that, but there's a lot of just great storytelling that comes in that
Hmm.
section there. And in a sense, it's like it really is. There's a reason why it's kind of like the golden age of cinema. It's because it's like after like the first 30 years or whatever, it's like people pretty much got filmmaking really dialed in at that point,
Yeah.
and storytelling and all kinds of stuff. And that's why there's a lot of cool stuff there. And I think if you just kind of kept it there, don't try to modernize it, don't try to put any goofy stuff in there or anything like that. Like just try to make it feel really legitimate. I think it could be really badass. As I said, 'cause
There you are.
oh, this little freeze up.
Yeah. First one in like five episodes, so I'm fine with that. But yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be fun, and it is kind of a cheat. But I couldn't pick which one of those movies. If I was only going to pick one, it would be the Phantom.
Hmm.
Um, because I don't. I feel like I like Rocketeer as much, but I feel like it needs it less than the others.
Yeah.
And Dick Tracy, I
Well,
haven't seen in so long, I barely even remember it.
yeah, you get good old Al Pacino really chewing scenery as he always does.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's just walking all monster like and so on. Um, but yeah, well, I think all those ones are all pretty darn good. So I think probably if I had to think about it, like the Rocketeer is probably the most well done of them all, and it's
yeah.
pretty darn accurate to the comic and everything like that. It's even got what's her name too in it as Betty Page, pretty much. No, it's not Betty Page. It's
Oh,
Betty Page. You
Jennifer
got
Connelly.
yeah, Jennifer Connelly in there. But if you're gonna replace Betty Page, Jennifer Connelly, I'm like, okay, there we go. I'm sold. Because Betty Page got all weird by that point. That was the point where she had the weird like turn where she went like full Christian and so on like that. And then she was like, "Nope, I don't want to have any of this stuff with my likeness anymore and the pinup stuff. I'm all done with that era." You know.
Yeah,
So it became a weird cluster. She was fine with it when the comic book came out. 6 years later, or whatever the heck it was. Maybe it's probably a little bit, maybe 8, 10 years later when the movie comes out. She's like, "Nope, forget it. Get Jennifer
mm,
Connelly in there."
yeah.
That's okay.
Hey, I'm always pro Jennifer Connelly. Always pro Jennifer Connelly. Uh,
Yeah, it's the same here. So I'm not complaining. It's like that's like that one. It's like oh you lost Betty Page. It's like what are you gonna do to replace her? You know what I mean? It almost reminds me of like David Lee Roth, like when he does like he like leaves Van Halen. It's like well how are you gonna find a guitar player as good as Eddie Van Halen? It's like oh hold on a second. Here's Steve Vai. Like oh well geez you found the guy's pretty much about just as good.
yeah, How you
You-
how you gonna replace Angus Young?
yeah,
How you
that's
gonna
actually a
put
tough one
Steve?
there.
How you gonna replace Steve Perry? We got this little Filipino kid over here that. Oh man, but yeah, that's my number two. We'll call it the noir cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Pulp cinematic
Yeah,
universe.
pulp. I like that. Your pulp fiction of like
Yeah,
superhero characters and
the
so
pulp
on.
the pulp universe. Um, yeah, I even thought about, man, you can, like, if Universal did it, you can, like, mix those characters in and then mix them in with the Universal monsters somehow.
Somehow, some way that'd be
Yeah,
that's actually. I feel Universal would actually kind of, if it was old school kind of Universal, would give it the right vibe. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
because interesting enough though, it's like I want to say the Rocketeer. I know is a Disney movie. I'm
It
trying to think of
is.
what the heck is the Phantom Disney as well. Maybe not.
I can't remember what the Phantom
Maybe
is.
it's Warner Brothers. I know I own them all, but like I'm just trying to picture like what DVD case it is. That always tells me like who made it.
I think the Phantom might be one of. I might be completely wrong about this. So and this is with me having no information in front of me because I'm using my phone for this. But I feel like it was one of those offshoot Disney brands.
Yeah, like a Hollywood Pictures or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, like Hollywood Pictures or like didn't they own Touchstone or something?
Yeah, Touchstone as well.
Yeah, I feel like it was one of those, but I could be completely wrong.
No, that sounds about right.
Yeah, um, but yeah, the pulp cinematic universe is my number two. So what's your number one? I have
So
a feeling I know what it is, but I want to hear what you say.
well, you say this, but I think this one might kind of throw you for a curveball
Okay.
here. And now this is another one of those movies that I feel like some people would be like, "This you're messing with a classic here." And I'm like, don't get me wrong, I think this movie is a total classic, and I think it's fantastic, and I think it has one of the best car chase scenes in almost any movie and so on like that. But here's the thing: it's by this point it's been 70, 80 years almost, and I think it could just have just a remake that would not affect the original one, and I'm going with Bullet, the Steve McQueen movie.
Mm.
But I was thinking if Daniel Craig and Martin Campbell did it, you know what I mean?
Ooh. Ooh.
You know? And here's the thing
Yeah.
about Bullet, because Bullet was originally designed to
Yes.
be, it was supposed to have sequels. That was how that movie was made. But Steve McQueen's like, nah, one and done. I'm out of here. So that was kind of it. And then they always kind of said that Dirty Harry pretty much did what Bullet was supposed to do. Dirty Harry took the police, the San Francisco police officer, and then ran with sequels. And that was what the guys that made Bullet always wanted to do, and they never were able to because Steve McQueen, he does what he wants to do, you know.
Hmm.
But I think that like I would love to see like a trilogy even of like Bullet. You know what I mean? Like as I said, I think Daniel Craig he would be the perfect Steve McQueen type guy. I think Martin Campbell, who directed GoldenEye and Casino
Yeah.
Royale, of course, is Mask of Zorro. He did a bunch of great stuff and so
Hmm.
on. Even Edge of Tomorrow with Mel Gibson. But I think that would be a good combo because even just I picture, and this is one of the few where I kept saying the other ones they should be period pieces. This is one of the few that like you could make it modernized and would not take away from it at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He could literally be in modern. He could still drive, muscle cars, all of John Wick style as well too. You can keep that there because you don't think about like in Bullet, that car's a brand new car at that
Yeah.
time period. You watch the movie, and you're like, oh, cool, it's an old muscle car. It's like not when that was made. That was brand
Yeah.
new.
Well, it's a classic car.
But
No, it's a contemporary car in the movie.
yeah, yeah, So yeah, I think that that would be such a sweet one. Did I ever tell you I met the dude who drove all like the action scenes of Bullet?
No.
He was Steve McQueen's stunt double.
My God.
That guy was awesome or whatnot like that. Never got hurt once in doing any stunt. Somehow, some way. He was like, I mean, I met him at like when he was like 70 years old or something like that. But yeah, I think Bullet with Daniel Craig and just you could just up the action in it and so on like that. Because remember, Bullet's a great movie, but you got to be kind of into old movies to watch Bullet. You can't just you couldn't be like go to someone's house and they're like, oh man, I just watched like John Wick and be like, oh dude, John Wick, hold on, have you seen Bullet? Like that person's probably not gonna dig it as much because it really has. It's one of those movies. It's got like 3 action scenes in the entire movie.
Yeah.
They're good, but it's very old school 60s where it's like when there's violence, it gets really violent. When there's a car chase, it's there, but that's about all there is.
Yeah.
But even just a straight up remake of Bullet One and then lead into some sequels, I think would be pretty sweet.
That would be dope as fuck, actually.
And
Yeah,
then it just bring more light anyways towards the class. Because sometimes every once in a while you need to have remakes just so that you can shine a light on the original one anyways. It kind of like a lot of times I feel like sometimes a remake never generally takes away from the original one. The original one's always still there, and you never know, they might put a new cool 4K release out, special edition, all that kind of stuff. A lot of times doesn't happen if there's not a remake or a reason for them to do it.
yeah. I really like that. I really, really like that. Well, mainly because you sold it with the Martin Campbell thing.
Yeah. I think that's a good combo. Just picture Martin Campbell, Daniel Craig playing it. And I feel like that's one of those ones, hey, these guys can work together. They don't have to do a 007 thing. It's kind of like 007, but it's its own thing, you know.
Yeah. No,
But
I'm for it.
you can still keep it real violent because that's the other thing too. It's like it's almost like, because that movie's a full on rated R movie, Bullet. So it's like I think still keep it like that and still keep it that if somebody gets shot, have some cool squib effects and all kinds of stuff like that. And for Daniel Craig, it's like it's almost like you could be a cop, but you could be like a violent cop because that's what he was like the original Dirty Harry, where he just kind of went in and did things on his own without questioning really like the authority and so on.
No, I like that. Yeah, no, that would. Yeah, I'm for it. I'm for it. Almost to the point where I would like want to take that one as one of mine because that's a really good idea. Yeah, the Martin Campbell thing. There's a few other people who I think could do it. Was it Brad Bird or the McQuarrie, the Mission Impossible guys.
Yeah, that
Um,
actually be a good choice as well.
can you hear the helicopter?
Is that a helicopter? Sound like a
Oh
tractor.
yeah,
Oh, it's a helicopter. I can tell now.
yeah. We're not far. I'm not far from Fort Bragg where I'm at.
Oh, okay.
So every once in a while we'll just be sitting here like fucking Black Hawk. Like what the fuck? Um,
That happens too because there's a mountain warfare training center. It's not as a crow flies. It's kind of close, but it's up in the mountain areas and stuff like that. And
mm,
every once in a while, you'll just get a couple of Chinook helicopters and stuff just come flying over it. So
well, that's. Was that your number one?
yeah, that's my number one.
And we're cruising along. Well, let's. I'll do some of my honorable mentions, and you can too before I get up to my number one. Does that sound good?
Yeah, we can
Um,
do that.
well, actually, I'll do my number one. Then we'll both give our
Yeah,
honor.
because just in case the honorable mentions happen to like run over
Yeah,
the other one.
yeah. So my number one, I went. There was a lot of. I have a lot of honorable mentions, but this one felt like I fell in love with this movie when I watched it. But it's one of the weirdest experiences still I've ever had watching a movie because it's so disjointed. Good, but it's just like the way they executed this movie is still baffling to me. But Buckaroo Banzai.
Mm.
Now, have you said you have seen it, or you didn't care for it that much, or
Yeah, Buckaroo Banzai, I'll say is that was a movie that I had on my list for a long time to watch. And then I finally watched it, maybe say 5, 6 years ago or something like that. And I always thought I was gonna really like this movie. I
yeah,
heard nothing but good things about it. I knew it was gonna be kind of weird and wacky. It had Jeff Goldblum in it and all kinds of stuff. There felt like there was a lot of things that were gonna work for me. And I remember watching it and I was just like, man, I couldn't get into it. Like it
yeah,
just I don't know. I felt like I don't know. I like to give it another go personally too, because sometimes you just need to give it a second try. But since you mentioned that being like some of the remake, because I think it has a great concept. I think there's a concept there that's phenomenal.
conceptually, it's amazing. And the weird thing is, if you've never seen Buckaroo Banzai, I think it's called Across the Fifth Dimension. Buckaroo Banzai Across the Fifth Dimension. Imagine it was actually a TV show, not a movie, and you're watching episode 13, Across the Fifth Dimension is the name of the episode, because that's what it feels like when you're watching the movie. It feels like it drops you in the middle of a series because the way it introduces the characters, the way it introduces the story, like there's like an introduction at the beginning, but after that, it's just like you're thrown into this ongoing story and you're catching up as you go along. And but it's such a cool concept. Like you have all these polymaths across the world that are good at like not just science, but they're a bunch of Da Vinci's, but instead of painting, they're into rock music and they have rock bands and stuff, which is just such a cool idea. And
Hmm.
that movie was so fun. John Lithgow was great in it. Of course, you have was it Peter Weller, RoboCop?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. So and Jeff Goldblum's in it. There's some other people in there I can't remember, but it's just such a wacky concept. It's kind of 80s aesthetic mixed with like some 50s aesthetic.
Mhm.
There's just a lot of weird shit going on. But what I would do is I would restart it because I think there's comics later on that kind of retold the story and brought it back. And I would take all that extra content and I would restructure it and have a more proper introduction. And the people I would get to do it are the Duffer Brothers who did Stranger
Ooh.
Things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and which I didn't know that till recently. They're from Durham, North Carolina. I had no idea till recently.
There's
Uh,
so much stuff from North Carolina. That's Maximum Overdrive.
yeah, Maximum Overdrive, all in Wilmington. Um, as a matter of fact, they shot that when I was living down there. I didn't know that till recently. That and Ninja Turtles. No, actually,
Yep.
Maximum Overdrive was a little before I lived down there. I take that back.
It, it's Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, that was filmed when I was down there.
Mhm.
Both were filmed. Mario was filmed right as I moved. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, yeah, Buckaroo Banzai could work. It's just it was executed so odd. I still can't wrap my head around how they decided to put this together. It was like they had too much, and they're
Mhm.
just like, okay, well, let's just throw it out there and structure it the best way we can, see how it works. And I think it's good. I think it's good as is. But I think if you had a proper introduction to the world and really set it up, it almost might actually work better as a TV series. But we'll say as a movie. But I would get the Duffer Brothers to do it because they'd have the best way to integrate the music into it, the characters, the world, the factions, the villains. Yeah, it would be it would be fun. And then the kind of sci-fi element where you're going across dimensions and different stuff. Yeah, they would make it work. I would be
Yeah,
interested
no,
to see that.
that would be one of those ones. It'd be cool to see that sort of expanded and tried again and so on like that. As I said, I love the concept of it. I'd like to give it another go because yeah, just that one time watching it, I felt like I couldn't get it or I just couldn't get into it and so on. And there was a lot of stuff I liked in there, but just yeah, just I don't know the execution of it and so on. But I
It's
think that'd be an
off.
interesting yeah, I think that'd be an interesting one to give another go to.
Yeah, it's just the way they reference things, even the way they reference each other or certain characters. It's referencing it like you've been watching this television show and you know what's going on. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's so weird, but I mean, it was kind of supposed to be, but I don't think it was supposed to be weird in terms of execution. It was supposed to be more weird in just in terms of the concept. Um, but yeah, fun movie, good cast. Go watch it if you've never seen it. I might review that again soon. But yeah, Duffer Brothers with Buckaroo Banzai, they'd make it work.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. Well, speaking of honorable mentions, what's some of the honorable mentions that we should go through? You want me to go with mine? Go with one of
Mm,
them?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, this one that I kind of had is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but give it that Magnificent Seven remake kind of vibe, because we all know that westerns always need a helping hand nowadays.
Hmm.
They're so few and far between anymore. A lot of times I always say if you go to the movie theaters, like you should always try to see every western you can that comes in there because you got to be grateful because there's only about one or two that sometimes show up a year, you know. But I think like that Magnificent Seven remake I thought was a really well done remake in a sense where it kind of kept the original vibe and everything like that, had a good cast of characters and so on like that, up the action even a little bit more and so on there. And I think if you did that with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that's another classic story. And once again, it doesn't affect the original one, just brings more light to it and so on like that. That could make for a pretty sweet, kind of like hopefully get people to be excited about a Western again.
No, yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, I never thought about going. That's a little further back than I even thought about going, but no, that would
I
be
felt
really
like
good.
like most of my movies are all kind of old ones.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done. I think that's one of the reasons we get frustrated with all the remakes and stuff. But sometimes it's just because and even the IPs, it's just like, well, we could have made this 20, 30 years ago. Now we have the technology to make it. Like people get mad about the Transformers. Well, if they would have made that shit in could have made that shit in the 80s, they would have. But you couldn't
Yeah.
have really executed that very well then. And I think that's something that happens now too. It's just like yeah, that movie was good then, but imagine what we could do now. You know what I mean? Like, I think that happens a lot. But no, but that one's already executed pretty well, but that would be an interesting one to see. I guess I don't know if you'd have in it. I mean, it would be tempting to have Brad Pitt in there because he's kind of the modern day, But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know who you'd have in there, but it'd be interesting to see. I'd watch the shit out of it.
Yeah, as I said, I just thought because as I said, that Magnificent Seven remake, I think, gives the best vibe. Like, I feel like you literally you can get a similar crew that was on that just to do that again. Because that's a perfect example. That movie too is yeah, Magnificent Seven is a total classic, just like Seven Samurai and all that kind of stuff too. And both those old ones totally hold up, like no problem whatsoever. But the new one just kind of gave a little bit extra light to it. I feel with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, yeah, you just have to get the two core characters. You have to get two iconic actors that could really chew some scenery on there. That's the key
Yeah,
thing, but beyond that though, I think that's just the right one that like would give the western genre kind of like, some light again, you know what I mean?
yeah, I like that one. Yeah, I would watch the shit out of that. Um, so I've got one. I've got several of them, but I'm gonna stick to just a couple of them. Cutthroat Island
Yep.
is one that I feel like I mean, if it had worked, I don't know if we'd ever got to Pirates of the Caribbean, right?
Yep.
Because they
Kind of
would have
sets the
just stuck with
foundation.
that. Yeah, they would have stuck with that instead. But I wouldn't mind seeing that given another chance because it was just such a just cluster the way that thing was made and just egregiously mismanaged to the point. And nothing wrong. I love Gina Davis. I love the cast, but I don't think it was cast very well either. And I feel like they could do that better now. But that's one of them that I thought I considered it pretty high, but the only thing wrong was it's kind of been replaced by Pirates of the Caribbean, which is why I didn't make my list. But I still, because I love pirate shit, I love pirate shit. I would like to see that one remade. What up,
Well,
Greg?
I was gonna say I thought about pirate stuff anyways because that was something that always kind of bothered me. Is Pirates Caribbean came out, but nobody made it. You would have thought there would have been all kinds of other pirate movies like that. The genre would have taken off. No, nothing happened of that. That was, and it's like one of those ones like, and really, Cutthroat Island. That's the only major pirate movie other than maybe Muppet Treasure Island. Before Pirates of the Caribbean. You know.
Yeah, yeah. They've tried TV shows since Pirates of the Caribbean. They've had some, Assassin's Creed, Black Flag, a couple other pirate video games. Y'all should probably get off and take care of your wife and kids. Yeah, I guess they're asleep though, so they're actually doing better than me. Um, but yeah, Cutthroat Island's one. What's some other ones you got?
Another one that I thought would be kind of fun would be Cannonball Run. And just do
Oh
a
yeah,
straight up remake of that or just that's for example, you could do a modern day version of it, but just get 15, 20, kind of super kind of eclectic actors in there and then have a cool car movie where, everybody's racing across and so on like that. And then yeah, everybody have their kind of certain characters and so on. It maybe doesn't be nearly as wacky and campy, maybe as the original Cannonball one is, but I just think still just make it fun, keep the fun factor, put a bunch of cool cars in there, and have that coast to coast race, which I guess could be something similar to what Michael Bay's Outrun might be. I don't know
yeah,
at this point.
yeah. You can have a really interesting cast of people in there. They'll just show like the same five actors they're trying to use. Like it's just gonna be Glenn Powell, but yeah, it's yeah, that would be actually really really fun. Um, so the one I'm surprised you didn't say, I didn't put it on my list because I thought you were gonna have it on your list. Is Spawn?
I literally thought about that one because I'm gonna say this. Another one I have on my list is Tank Girl. Speaking of like that same era,
Yeah,
is both those ones there. I thought about them. I literally thought about them, and I was like, because yeah, Spawn like it's the one and done movie. And of course, you have the HBO like animated series, but like that really kind of needs to have another reboot and someone like that. I feel like it's got to have one soon because if they hold off too long, Spawn's gonna be kind of forgotten.
yeah. It's one of those things that's been in development. It feels like for like 20 years at this point. Like
Yeah.
first it was going to be just a sequel, then they're like, okay, we're going to reboot it, and I feel like Hellboy's been rebooted like 8 times, and they haven't rebooted Spawn.
Yeah, because
But
Hellboy's got yeah animated movies and a couple live action movies and so on. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I would like to see that one redone. It probably wouldn't be a remake. That's the other reason I didn't put it on the list. It's probably just be a reboot in general. Um,
Hmm.
but that was just one where they weren't. It was like that Power Rangers movie they did in the '90s. Like they weren't ready for the things they were trying to do. Like they didn't have the budget or the technology to pull off that CGI at the end of Spawn. I think it's still the worst. It's
Well,
still the worst I've ever seen.
there's better CGI on a PlayStation One than there is in that movie. Like
Yeah,
that's like what it is. It's like no joke. It's like if you've never seen the Spawn movie, like the CG is, but like it's so bad that I actually really like it because I'm actually very nostalgic for very like
me too.
funky 90s CG and so on like that. But I remember even watching it in 98 or whatever when it came out on like the HBO or whatever the heck, and I just remember even then you're like, wow, that looks really off. Like even then it was like it's like this doesn't look too good, but like I still like the movie a lot. But I think that one, yeah, straight up, just well, just a reboot of just Spawn in general. I think it still fits in the similar category, but I
Yeah,
definitely think so.
yeah, yeah. That one would be interesting to see. I would like to see who they cast, and it would be a whole new thing now. But yeah, that CGI was bad. I mean, Event Horizon was another one I was thinking of that had some of the same problems, and um, yeah, uh, and also you need the Power Rangers in there because they tried rebooting it a few years ago. But I would like it to look like that Power Rangers, but just with today's technology. Like take that Power
Yep.
Rangers.
Well, that's
Um,
the thing. Keep it 1993 looking Power Rangers. Like, don't
yeah,
change that, but just do a modern day movie. Because that was the downfall of that one that came out. Like, it was an okay movie, but it was just kind of like it was diluted. Is the best way I can kind of like sort of say it.
yeah. It just didn't. It was it. it the camp in Power Rangers had a unique charm to it.
Hmm.
It's almost like a lightning in the bottle thing. Like you couldn't duplicate it intentionally. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You would have to basically like I think when they did that Netflix special a couple years ago and they just brought back all the original people, it was actually
Which
better
is just
than
like two of them or whatever. But
yeah, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, because that way it still had the kind of look and everything. Well, I think that's the key thing is that like why Power Rangers are so good is because Japanese people made all the action scenes. Like,
yeah,
like I think that's the part that people kind of forget is like because sometimes they go to try to make it, it's like, well, let's be honest, like all the great action in it and everything like that is all made in Japan and so
yeah,
on. So I feel like they almost need to pull that kind of like together, be like, no, 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 do like a mixed match where it's half Japanese, half American, production and really go to town on it.
yeah. There'll be a lot of things I could see them do. Then there's a lot of those IPs that I feel like they should have been like, especially those cartoons from the '90s. Like, oh man, bring some of those back.
Hmm.
Um, and I would rather see them trying to chime in on those things and bring that stuff back as opposed to a fucking Monopoly movie, like a board game movie. Like, what's next? Yahtzee 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no, there's some goofy ones there, but no, I think there's a lot of that stuff in there. That's because I also mentioned Tank Girl because even though I like the Tank
Yeah,
Girl movie with Lori Petty quite a bit, I just feel like that's one of those ones that you could just I feel it could work really well. Still you could once again kind of keep it still 90s and everything like that. Keep it very Attitude Era, and there's a lot of stuff you could work with in there, and just give it because that movie's one of those movies that kind of falls prey to being like, yeah, it only has a certain amount of budget, and so on. They kind of hang out in a room for a long time and so on.
hmm,
So I feel that granted, is Tank Girl popular enough to even make a movie anymore nowadays? It might be a little bit of a stretch, but I still think that would be kind of interesting.
yeah, yeah. See, I feel about Tank Girl the way you felt about kind of Buckaroo Banzai. I just could not get that one to work for me. Um, it kind of remind. I think it's because I watched it very almost around the exact same time as I watched shit um Biodome.
Okay.
And something about it gave me that same vibe. I don't know what it is, but something about that movie gave me the same vibe. I'm like, I can't fuck with this right now. I think if I watched it now, I'd feel a little bit differently, but I was still like, you know, traumatized by Biodome again. Um,
Yeah.
that I just could. Oh, man. The first 20 minutes of Biodome made me hate my life. It gets better. It gets better.
Yeah.
But, well,
I would say I'm pretty nostalgic for Biodome in a weird way, but I also like Pauly Shore quite a bit too.
yeah, I like him a lot. I like him a lot. I just that
But
movie.
that movie is the definitive like retarded comedy. When they use that phrase, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. We're not making fun of people who have that disability. We're saying we're making
No,
fun
no, no.
of those people.
Yeah, like the Christopher Titus way of like defining retarded. It's like retarded isn't like a special ed kid. That's when your friend does something really stupid.
And that was Pauly Shore in the '90s. That was all of our friend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's that. It's another movie I was gonna say is just it's on my list. It's in that same era, and I guess it'd be more of like a I guess you would say a reboot, whatever. But it's Double Dragon, because Double Dragon's
Mm,
one of those ones that kind of came out, and it feels like that movie should be way better than it really is. You know, it should be just as good as Ninja Turtles and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's weird. It's a movie about martial arts, and the martial arts are like super half-assed in that
yeah.
movie. Like, it's just there nothing's really that great in it. I still enjoy the movie for nostalgic reasons. I'm not saying that, but that's like one of those ones that like if you could take the Double Dragon and make it kind of that fun surf 90s kind of vibe of Three Ninjas, Ninja Turtles, all that kind of stuff, but actually just pair it with some really legitimate martial arts, I think you could have a really badass movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I would. Yeah. There's a lot of those video game stuff from the '90s. I mean, Street Fighter, all that shit. I wouldn't mind seeing. Kind of
Yep.
giving attention again. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
One I will throw out there too. I don't. I think it's fine where it is. It doesn't need to be remade because I think it's one of the. It's actually one of my favorite '90s movies. But I would like to see a modern take on it based on where society is now, because I think it's even more intense because it's the movie's still pertinent today, but I think it would be even more so if they made it now. But it's Demolition Man. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Demolition Man. I'd be interested to see what they did with that now. Um, if you had the right people involved. I don't know who you would. I mean, you can't have Stallone and Snipes again. Um, I don't know who you would put instead.
Hmm.
Probably like John Cena and somebody else. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, you'd have to pull somebody like that, but if it was done right, it could be well because that's the thing about Demolition Man is how accurate it actually kind of is towards the future society and how people are acting and so on like that, and how it nails a lot of that stuff pretty darn well.
mhm.
It would be interesting to see that taken even farther. Whether if that was either a sequel and or just like just a retelling of like just a different variation of nowadays looking forward.
Yeah, I would like to see them use it with some of our jargon and just kind of build off the things that have happened and where our
Hmm.
society actually is right now and take the things that we don't like about it out 30, 40 years and see where it goes. Plus, I would like to see another Demolition Man Taco Bell tie in.
Yeah,
Um,
why not?
I mean, that's really the main reason I want it. So, bring back tie ins,
Yeah,
honestly.
fast food tie-ins, 100%.
Yeah, bring them back. They try every once in a while, but it's just not the same. It's not the same.
No.
But
Once in a blue moon, 7-Eleven will have something, but it doesn't happen very often. I almost
yeah,
want to say the last one I remember was Detective Pikachu, and I went kind of hard on that because I got excited. I got cups, I got a hat, I got a Pikachu stuffed animal thing. I was like, dude, they don't have tie-ins enough. Give me it all.
oh, my son will go crazy. So that's his new. See, I've never been really big into Pokemon. I knew enough about it just by absorbing it through life for the past 25, 30 years. But now my son's really, really into it. He's into everything Pokemon. Everything's about Pokemon. Like he's about to have a Pokemon birthday party. Like in a
Oh,
couple.
there you go.
Yeah. So that that would have been cool if I wish I would have done my homework because now he asks me questions like, "What does this guy do?" I'm like, "I don't even fuck that." I bought him some book. I bought him a book, like it's a handbook that has all the Pokemon in it. It gives you their height, weight, all the shit that
Yeah.
they do. And he's like, "What's this guy do?" I'm like, "You know more about this than I do. I don't. I really don't
Well,
know."
it's just one of those ones like, I can remember 151, like, no problem. But the second this stacks up to like 700 and whatever it's at now, it's like I've played every single Pokemon game. I've not missed a single one, but like, there's just your brain just can't handle like I guess it's like that Dunbar thing where they say you can only remember like 200 people's name. Well, that probably makes sense. You probably only remember 200 Pokemon properly.
Yeah, yeah. Like I know back in the recesses of my mind, I have probably 1,000 former NFL players. But if you ask me to write down, I'd probably get about 200. But
Yeah.
I know back there in the back, there's the second string running back from the Seattle Seahawks in 2002. But you know, I'm not. That was just not going to jump to the forefront of my mind. Um, but yeah. Anyway, thank y'all for listening. The eyes are starting to get red and stingy, so it's time for me to go to bed. I made it longer than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, sometimes you get that wind going once you start getting a good conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And we're gonna keep doing this every week. So what things are gonna go? I haven't talked about part of this with Spencer yet, so he's gonna be shocked. What we've been doing this every week for a few weeks now, and I really like it. So I think what we're gonna do over the next couple of weeks is kind of get that analog legends thing going up, and actually put these episodes out in the podcast world too. We're gonna keep doing things the same way. The only difference I might do is just go upstairs and turn the phone sideways, and actually have my microphone in. But other than that, I'm gonna keep. I don't know. I kind of like being outside.
The outside's kind of cool. I feel like I need to go outside and like we could have the double outside experience, make a little bonfire and everything
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. It's
Watch the
all my
critters go out.
yeah,
Run on by little coyotes, mountain lions, whatever's out there.
yeah. Here, I just might have. There's been a rabbit over here beside me like this whole time, just sitting in the yard. I keep looking over and he's there. I keep hearing him every once in a while. Um, but yeah, all my shit's upstairs, like all my analog shit. You know what I mean? That's all
Yeah.
up there. And so yeah, we'll keep doing this every week, and we'll probably start in May. Start doing some podcasts. I've already worked on some new episodes for the show because I was like, I'm gonna hit it hard in May. I want to get a few episodes ahead. Um, because really this month I was just trying to fill things out. Like, where are we gonna go? What are we gonna do? Um, so yeah, new episode. We're gonna keep doing this every week. I've got some new reviews I'm doing, and then we'll see if we can, eventually evolve into doing some wrestling stuff again and more video game stuff. And that's what Analog Legends is for. So, oh, that hit me.
Yeah,
But
it's about that time.
yeah, about that time. But thank y'all for those who were hanging out. Well, most of y'all, Soul Reaper's a dick, but everybody else was pretty cool. I finally muted him. He's like, I don't know, don't talk about my kids, man.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah, look at all this artwork. I was just with
Yeah,
him.
no.
I was with him earlier, all day long.
There's some Hot Wheels on the ground there too. Or is that
It's
just me?
we drew a racetrack is what we did,
Oh, nice.
and those are those monster truck, uh, Hot Wheels. Um,
There we go.
yeah,
Maximum overdrive.
yeah. I was actually thinking about that. He's got some cool. He's got some ninja ones. He's got a Back to the Future DeLorean one over here.
Yeah, we gotta have that now.
Yeah, in the Jurassic Park. He's got the Ford Explorer Jurassic Park monster truck, which
That's
is pretty
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could see it, I would bring it over here. I know it's over here in this vicinity, but I can't see where he's got it. But yeah, yeah. And he had a Batmobile one too, but I don't know where that one's at. But yeah, anyway, thank y'all for hanging out with us. Keep doing this every week. And eventually we'll have these up on Spotify, iTunes, new podcast. It'll be the Analog Legends thing. So anyway, thank y'all for listening. Any last thing you want to throw out there before we get off here?
Nah, I think that's good. You can always just check out any more of the podcasts I do at Old Man Orange, just
Yep.
literally here on YouTube at Old Man Orange, and just more movie reviews, game reviews, and just having a good old time.
There you go. Old Man Orange via VHS. Analog Legends. We're throwing all kinds of shit at you. So anyway, thank y'all for listening. Y'all have a good one. And via VHS is out.